Ryan Osman, Ryanosmun.
Jessica McNeil, JESSIKAMCNEILL.
Okay. So take me a little bit. Tell me about like your trip and what happened.
So we were just going up through the subway. We were gonna go. It was just a day hike. Hike there and hike back out. We knew it was about 9 miles, so we had planned to be there pretty much all day. So we got there. We got there probably like 9 o'clock, and just started hiking. Got about to. It was probably about 4.5 miles into when I had gotten stuck in the quicksand, and she had. We were walking across a. It was like a pond, but it was about like 12 inches deep, and we were using a stick to see if it, if it was deep or how much the stick would go in, and everything seemed to be okay. So as we were walking through it, she had tripped and fallen forward. So her knees went in and her hands went in, and she kind of got scared. So I told her to calm down so that she wouldn't sink more. So I was able to kind of help her get up and, walk away from where it was sinking at. And as that was happening, I didn't realize that my right leg was sinking into the quicksand. And by the time I realized that I was sinking in it, I was by waist deep by then. And my left leg had started to sink also. So it was about midway of my calf deep. And I was able to lift my left leg out of it slowly. But by that time I had my right leg had dug in too deep to even move. And I couldn't pull it out at all. I couldn't even move it. So as soon as she noticed that, she got down and started to try to dig the sand out. But it was too late. The water was just refilling, covering the sand up, refilling the hole as she dug. And, the water's below freezing temperature. So her hands are, 30 seconds in there, your hands are burning and you can't feel them. So that wasn't really working out.
So that's probably why you didn't even realize you were sinking because it's cold.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about sinking. I didn't think I would sink that far. We had crossed a couple of paths the same type of area where you would sink to your midpoint of your boot and you would stop and pull it out and you'd be fine. So I figured at worst it would go cover my whole boot. And I didn't even, I didn't feel it, my whole leg sinking in while I was trying to help her out.
So you get Jessica out, and then you realize you're stuck, and she can't get you out. So Jessica, what did you do?
I tried digging, and that wasn't working, obviously. And we did try a couple sticks to try and help, I don't know, put a space between the sand and his leg, and we couldn't do it. And I told him to use my body to pull himself, but he's obviously twice my size, so that wasn't working. And he eventually told me I needed to leave him and hike back to get cell service to call 911.
And what did you feel at that moment when he said you have to go?
That I wasn't going to see him again.
I mean, this is a life and death situation, right?
Yeah. I thought for sure when she left that I would lose my leg for sure. I didn't start thinking about losing my life quite at that moment, but the water was so cold I thought for sure I would lose my leg because there was no way she was going to be able to get there fast enough to have people come get me out. So I thought for sure my leg would be gone.
But you guys are experienced hikers.
Yes.
Have you been to Zion before?
Yes.
So on previous trips when you went to Zion, was it a different time of year? Or?
Yes, it was a different time of year. We had also never been to that part of the park. It was called the Subway. We had never been to that area, but there was nothing I would change. We were prepared as we could be. There was, that's why I do have my leg, is because we had these neoprene socks. The boots were, they would let water out, so the socks really we had double socks on, so those keep your feet warm. And if it wasn't for those, I would almost guarantee wouldn't have my leg.
Well, you guys each take a turn, and whoever wants to go first. After you were separated, what were you feeling?
When she left, I was really scared, just mostly for her, because I had to help her quite a bit on the way up in the hike, just because the rocks were so tall, and it just took two people to get to where we were at. So I was really scared, just not knowing how she was going to get back by herself, and I didn't know if I would ever see her again either.
Well, after seeing him with tears in his eyes and telling me to leave him, which I did not want to do, but trying to get cell service down there was impossible. I tried, and I knew that was the only way to save his life, is to leave him, but I didn't know if he even had the time left, because it took us 4.5 hours to get to where we were, and that was with his help. So I took off and I ran down, because we were on top of a couple of waterfalls, so I ran down them, and we switchbacked through the river, so we were trying to stay on land as much as possible to keep warm. But on my way back, I realized the fastest way is just to go straight through the river, so I basically tried to swim as much as possible down the river, which was a lot faster, because I got there in about 3 hours, and I made it to the switchbacks and was able to get cell reception and call 911. It was the hardest thing I've had to do, scariest thing. I didn't even know if I would be able to do that hike by myself. There was a couple times I thought I might as well just turn back and we could just, be together for the last moments, but I just kept trying to push myself because I knew he would do it for me. So I made the call and got him help.
And the rangers came?
Yeah. I called 911, and they linked it with the rangers in the park, so it was a 3-way call, and they asked me to stay on the line. I was still trying to hike out while on the line with them. They were able to pinpoint my coordinates through my phone. They told me to meet them where my car was parked, but I was feeling so weak and about to faint. I told them they're going to have to meet me on the trail because I'm not going to make it that far. And sure enough, I did faint, and I woke up to some rangers picking me up and taking me to their truck with the heater on and some food. And I saw a few of them start packing up their packs and took off to get to him, and it was already dark.
Yeah, because they couldn't do the helicopter, right?
No.
The weather and all that, right? So tell me about that. I mean, you're still waiting, and you're wondering.
Yeah, I got stuck at probably about 1:30, and she left probably about 2 o'clock. So I was in there. I was in the water for 11 hours total. There was there was 2 snowstorms while I was waiting, just sitting in the water, and it was pouring snow. And that's when I had tucked my arms into my jacket. I pulled my beanie over my face and just put my face in my jacket. It was the best. It was the only way to keep warm. My upper half of my body. My left leg was on top. There was about a foot of water, so my left leg could stand on the sand. and just had about my butt up out of the water. But I'd been up standing up for so long, I was exhausted, and I'd fallen asleep. And when I fell asleep, I fell backwards, so I landed butt in the water, and it was so cold that it woke me up right away. But I couldn't sit up because I didn't have enough energy. And one of the sticks that she had given me before she had left, I had stuck in the ground right in front of me. And luckily, I was able to just barely pull myself up out of the water with that stick. And I was dry before that. My waist was dry, but now I was soaking wet. My left leg was fully wet, so I was back to just being freezing cold, shivering.
But mentally, I mean, you must have been thinking, "This is it. It's."
Yeah, it got to the point once the sun went down. I I figured it had to have been over 5 hours in my mind, and I didn't think that they would have hiked in to rescue me. I thought for sure they would have only been able to send a helicopter because no one would be able to hike fast enough. So I figured at that point, I didn't know if she had made it because it was getting dark and I knew that she would have already been to the trailhead if she had made it because it had just been so long. And so, there were a couple of times where I had heard the helicopter, and I would look out of I would pull my face out of my jacket, and I would look around, and there would be no helicopter. I was just hearing things. And my jacket, the sleeves were frozen solid. They wouldn't move, so I couldn't put my hands outside of my jacket. Otherwise, I would never been able to get them back in, and that's what was keeping my core temperature warm. And so I would look up out of my jacket and I didn't see anything. There were times where I would hear people talking, but there was nobody around. I would look around as much as I could, and I didn't see anything. I didn't see anybody. When it was dark, the moon had lit up the area pretty well, so I could still see, quite a bit. But just hearing things and not knowing what was going to happen at that point, that's when I had started to feel like I didn't think I was going to make it out of there.
I mean, there's danger of animals too. There's lots of things.
Yeah. And I was stuck directly in the middle of it was about a 20 by 30 foot area, and I was stuck pretty much right in the middle of it. And I had just put my face back down in my jacket, and I was able to lean like my neck on the stick to hold me up because my body wasn't holding itself up anymore. And I just hoped that if I didn't fall asleep again because I was going to fall down, I wouldn't have been able to lift myself back up.
So not to be overly dramatic, but did you pray? Did you?
No, I didn't pray. I just hoped. I just hoped that she made it, and at that point, I was more cared about her making it because I didn't think I was going to. So I just hoped the best for her, honestly, and I didn't feel like I was going to make it out. So I hope that she did at least.
I prayed over and over again the whole way back. And then when it started snowing, I prayed that the snow would stop, and it did for a little bit. And
yeah, there was a good two snowstorms while I was waiting, and those really took my morale down because of how cold it was and just seeing the snow stacking up on the stick and my jacket. It didn't feel like I had a chance to get out.
And so, from what I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, tell me what really happened. The 2 rangers got to you in the night?
It had been dark probably for what I think to be an hour or two, and I had my face down in my jacket, and I saw a light hit my beanie because I was just face down, And at that point, I just thought I was dreaming because I had heard so many voices before and heard tons of things that nothing was there. I didn't want to waste the energy to look up because it was so hard to get my face back into the jacket. The light got brighter and it kind of seemed like it moved, and I thought I was dreaming, but I also just tried to yell. So I yelled here really loud, and his name is Tim, the guy who rescued me. He yelled back, and at that point I knew I wasn't dreaming. And I lifted my head out of my jacket and my arms through the sleeves, and I was waving my hands and yelling as loud as I could. I didn't have much of a voice at that time, but he heard me enough, and he came running up. And the first thing I asked him is if, who called him, and he said Jessica did. And I asked if she was okay, and he said yeah. And so at that point, I felt a ton of relief that she had made it fine. And he said that she had a little bit of hypothermia, but that she would be okay.
And you probably had a lot of hypothermia.
Yeah.
So Jessica, did they radio back? Did you know that they found him, or?
There was a lot of waiting. I didn't know how critical his condition was, really up until I saw him again in the hospital the next day. They were very helpful and honest, the best that they could be. Anytime that I would call in or his mom would call in, they would update us. The first call was that the first ranger made it and he was awake and conscious, because I honestly thought I'd get a call that he wasn't awake or anything. The next one, I called around 1 a.m. and they said they had pulled him out and was trying to get him up on IVs and warmed up in the sleeping bag, so that felt really relieving. And then they talked about a helicopter in the morning, but then in the morning when I got picked up by the ranger to take me back to my car, it was dumping snow. My car had like a foot of snow on it, and they're just in the bottom of the canyon with all the snow, so they definitely weren't getting a helicopter in there. But luckily there was a break later in the day. I was already waiting at the St. George Hospital by the time that the helicopter was able to go in and get him. So I was there as soon as he got into the hospital.
And that's a long time for both of you to not know what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
In a world like this where we have so constant text or whatever.
That was the hardest. I'm used to being able to just call him or like talk to him and not knowing, or being able to see him and know. It was hard.
Did you think, when you're there, did you think, I'm going to sink more, I'm going to keep sinking?
No, I didn't. Initially, once I sank, I didn't keep sinking. I felt stable. I wasn't worried about sinking deeper. I think that it was just, that's how deep it was. It was just a perfect amount to my hip, and that was it. If it was any deeper, I probably would have kept sinking though. So I didn't worry about sinking deeper. I just didn't know how to get out. I didn't know how. And I figured once the rescuers, if they got there, I didn't know how they were going to get me out either, because of the way that it was stuck and the way that the sand just refills instantly after you move it. It doesn't, you can't just dig it out.
And the guy stayed with you all night?
Yeah, so once Tim showed up, he's real proficient in the hike, so he was an hour ahead of everyone. And he tried to get me out a couple of times by himself with a pulley system that he hooked up to the rock and strapped it around my waist and under my arms, and he would pull it on the leverage, and it just felt like it was ripping my whole leg off. And the way this leg was facing forward, it was pulling my body over, so the way it happened, it forced me into the water, and I fell face first, and I could barely lift my body out of the water. So he had to stop and run over and lift me back out. And at that point, I was frozen then, because now my whole body was in the water. And tried a couple more attempts and it didn't work, so he decided to wait for the rest of the crew to show up, so that there were 3 more of them, and they were able to help me out and help him out. They got the pulley underneath my kneecap, and he got some neoprene gloves, so he was digging while 2 guys were lifting under my arms, and one of the other ladies was hitting the pulley, and it felt like it was just destroying my leg. It felt like if you touched my leg, it burned because it was so frozen. So when he would hit the pulley, it would just jerk it out of the sand, and I felt it move, and I was screaming louder than I've ever screamed in my life. And they freed it and lifted me up out of the water and ran me over to a rock and sat me down, and I couldn't stop shaking. My body was so cold. I was shivering uncontrollably, and one of the paramedics, she just hugged me, and it felt great because she was so warm, and it kept me from freezing.
Yeah, but what a feeling from going stuck and maybe dying to.
Yeah, it was the one of the best feelings of my life. Seeing his flashlight, knowing it was real, and then getting out of that was one of the best feelings of my life. I knew I wasn't going to die at that point.
And your leg's okay, your foot's okay, everything's okay?
Yeah, it's a little swollen, but I can move all of my toes and feel all of them, and I don't even think I'll have much damage somehow.
That's really awesome. So who's going to play you guys in the movie then?
I haven't thought about that one yet.
I'm thinking Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, there we go.
And maybe Kate Beckinsale. I
Yeah,
don't
you're
know
good.
what Tim looks like,
Yeah.
but maybe The Rock or something.
Yeah, The Rock, that would fit him.
Yeah. So do you have anything you want to say to the people that came and saved you?
Yeah, the rescue crew that saved me, there's not enough I could put into words how grateful I am for them. They saved her also, and they not only saved us, but they made me feel comfortable, like nothing was going to happen to me after they had gotten there, and nothing did. They made me feel amazing.
So did they tell you after the fact, like, you were this close to not?
No, but when he walked up, he said, "I'll be honest with you." He said, "You should be dead or unconscious right now." And he thought for sure, he said when he walked up, that he would see me laying in the water.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah, and I don't know how I did it, but if it wasn't for her, there's for sure no way I would have done it.
What do you want to say to Jessica?
That I love you very much, and thank you for saving my life.
You saved mine first.
That's awesome, you guys. Anything else you want to say that I didn't touch on?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, you invite us to the wedding, all right?
Yeah, there'll be one.
And don't go hiking in the snow anymore, okay?
Oh,
No.
we're taking a break.
Yeah. We'll take beach vacations now instead of quicksand.
Exactly. Some margaritas in the sand.
Yeah.
Quicksand.
Yeah.
And the subway is what? That's a normal trail that a lot of people go through? I mean, you didn't see anybody else?
Well, there's no trail, but it is you have to get a permit for it, and a lot of people go in the summertime. Everybody looked at us like we were crazy for going in the wintertime.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that, we weren't prepared, because we were prepared, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. I would do the exact same thing.
Do they know you're there, the rangers and stuff? Do you check in and say we're heading out?
Yes, we did the day before. We got a permit. We did everything right. So people knew we were there.